Here, and today I'm going to be showing you my one-shot Tinkerer build. So this has got a few things that we can change along the way, but I'll try to highlight that to you as we get to each point and show you anything that you might want to swap out or change. But yeah, let's just start this one as we normally do and go over to the specializations table. So for this one, unsurprisingly, we are using the sharpshooter, and some of the main reasons that we use this are one in the head. This is going to give us 15% increased headshot damage with rifles and marksman rifles. So that's going to be useful because we are using two marksman rifles in this case. We have breath control, and this is going to increase weapon stability. It's just going to take some of the sway away from the weapon and try and help us get on target just that little bit easier. We have emergency cleanse, and this is going to give us 100% medkit. But what it's also going to do is when you use it, it's going to remove status effects and increase resistance to bleed, poison and burn for 20 seconds afterwards. So we also have the sharpshooter tactical link. So it says all group members that are closer to enemies than you get 10% headshot damage. So we could help our team out a little bit. I think tanks and things like that definitely benefit from having a bit of extra headshot damage. So it's a little extra damage for the team. Nothing to write home about, but certainly that's something that we can use. So we have round after round, and this is a very important talent. So after 20 seconds in cover, you start regenerating ammo for marksman rifle and rifle, 5 of each, and every 10 seconds you're going to gain that. So if you're playing with directives, like sort of pistolero or ammo hoarders, this is really going to help to keep you topped up. And also the fact that we are playing with two marksman rifles, this is going to mitigate some of the risk of having two of the same weapon. We also have My Home is My Castle. It's just going to give you a little bit of armor when you're in cover. Could be useful. In this case, I don't think it's going to see much mileage, but it's definitely something that's there if you hop in cover. It might help you, say if you're at full health, just stop you getting one-shotted by a robotic dog or something like that, I guess. Okay. Other than that, in the weapons skill tree, we are just using the marksman rifle, so 15% increased marksman rifle damage from the tree is synergizing with what we have. And we also have the rifle unlocked here, which just allows us to get access to the digital scope that I use in this build, but that is one of the things that can change, and we'll go over once we get to it. Okay, with all that said, let's go down and have a look at the build. Take a look at the range, make sure everything's all set up correctly, go over the stat sheet, and then talk about how to use the build. So for my first weapon, I'm using the M700 Tactical. I just like this one because I feel it does a little bit more damage than the other marksman rifles, but it's not quite as much damage as the single shot M700 where you just put one bullet in at a time. I have that weapon. But I choose not to use that one as my primary just because this one has more ammo. We have the extended capacity, and having 12 rounds and not having to put each bullet in one at a time is going to keep more uptime for me, being able to keep my bonuses procced. So let's talk about this weapon. This is the tactical version, so as again as said, it has a little bit less damage than the other version, but it has a larger magazine. You'll see that in just a second. We have 20 ranks of expertise, so that's 20% extra weapon damage. The more you can put in, the better for you. And this one comes rolled with marksman rifle damage, headshot damage, and then damage to targets out of cover. So I have the talent determined rolled on here. I think most people are going to know what this does, but after killing an enemy with a headshot, the next shot you land on an enemy will be a guaranteed headshot. So if you kill an enemy with a headshot, you can shoot an enemy anywhere, in the foot, in the leg, the arm, and it's a guaranteed headshot. So this allows us to make use of our headhunter talent and just keep using it over and over again. So you'll see how that ties in just a moment. Just a quick word on the mods that I'm using. I'm using a small scope here just because, I should say a hollow sight, just because it allows me to see round much better than say a actual scope would. I have the extra 5 rounds in here, and I've gone with crit chance as both the other side slot and muzzle slot, as we do incorporate some crit chance and crit damage into this build. Okay, for the second weapon, we have the Model 700 again. This is the single shot one that doesn't have a magazine and does slightly more damage because of one of its attachments that you can place in. This one comes with 15 levels of expertise, so 15% weapon damage. I also have 15% marksman rifle damage, 111 headshot, and unfortunately I have damage to armor. So with this weapon being the subpar one as far as the bottom attribute, this is why I have it as my offhand weapon. What I've decided to do here is I've rolled preservation on this weapon. So killing an enemy repairs 10% of your armor over 5 seconds, and if you get a headshot kill, that improves the repair by an additional 10%. So effectively, once we have Headhunter and Determined procced, every kill pretty much is going to be a headshot, so we're going to be seeing 20% armor regeneration over 5 seconds. Now, I did say there was some differences in this build, and this is the first one that I have. You may wish to change this talent to something else. What you want to use is totally up to you. But some honourable mentions that I will say that I've used and I quite enjoyed was Streamlined. However, if you go down and your hive is inactive, which it will be for quite some time, not having yellow cores or skill tiers, it's going to mean that we lose this for quite a long time. If you're okay with that, you can definitely hit some much bigger numbers than what you normally would by equipping this. Naked is also okay because when you hit an enemy with no armor, that's 50% extra headshot damage, so that's okay as well. First Blood might be an interesting try if you're sort of worried about not being able to get the hit on the target, but not sort of recommended. Haven't tried that yet. And Lucky Shot is something that I also look to experiment with in the future to see if it's any good. But in this particular case, I would say that for the most part, the way that I've built mine, preservation allows me to be a lot more aggressive when I play, and that's why the choices that I've made from this point on are what they are, is because I have armor regeneration. The other point is that with this weapon we can see that we have the weapon damage placed in and a crit chance mod on the muzzle. However, I do use the dual scope here, and I use this because sometimes when enemies are really far away, the low zoom optic that I have on the other rifle just doesn't cut it, and this allows me to play both long and close range really efficiently, whilst keeping hold of both talents. So that's the reason why I've gone for that. You can change or modify whatever you like here. For my pistol, I've gone with the Busy Little Bee. There is definitely a reason for using the Busy Little Bee. Mine comes with pistol damage and damage to armor. If I could obviously get one with damage to targets out of cover, I would much prefer that. The talent Busy Little Bee, so what this is going to do is each shot to a different target, and it must be a different target, gives us stacks up to 10, and for each one of those stacks we gain 20% weapon damage, so up to 200% if we stack on 10 targets, which we can use this weapon to get our initial headshot kill, because sometimes when we lack the damage to get a kill on the first enemy, to get the chain going, this is going to be extremely useful to help us get that extra little bit of damage that we need to proc Headhunter and then start chain killing. So that's the main reason behind the pistol there. So I guess I should start with the star of the show, and that is the Tinkerer. Mine's nearly fully optimized and comes with a weapon damage, crit chance, crit damage, which is how it's rolled, and then we have a headshot damage mod placed into it. Now the talent, this is where it gets interesting, is called Abridged. If your primary and secondary weapons are not exotic or named and of the same type, archetype, the second weapon's talent will also be applied to the primary weapon. Does not apply if the primary and secondary weapon talents include weapon swapping, so you can't have weapon swapping talents. Does not apply if the primary and secondary weapons talents are the same, so you can't have the same talent either, which would be a waste of course. So effectively you can see that I will have Determined and Preservation active at all times, and that's what I was talking about before, about the reason for me choosing Preservation is because obviously with us headshotting we are going to see the top end of that bonus 20% for every kill that we make. Okay, so with that out of the way, I guess I should really focus on the important parts and then move on to the others. So for my chest, I am using the Chain Killer. This gives me 5% weapon damage and comes rolled with weapon damage at 15%, 10% headshot damage, 12% crit hit damage, and a 10% headshot damage mod placed into it. It has the talent Perfect Headhunter, so after killing an enemy with a headshot, your next weapon hit within 30 seconds deals 150 of that killing damage blow. So yeah, it's going to increase our headshot amount, but also damage is capped to 800% of your weapon damage. This is raised to 1250 if your headshot damage is greater than 150, which we'll see that it is. So obviously this is one reason why I've taken the weapon damage, and you'll see why I've gone for the Chain Killer having that 5% weapon damage. We are stacking weapon damage predominantly here over headshot damage. So for my backpack, I am using an Oraldi Holdings, and this gives us 10% marksman rifle damage and comes with the attributes of weapon damage at 15. We have a headshot damage roll and a crit chance roll, and we also have a 10% headshot damage mod placed in. Now, I've gone for maybe a little controversial choice here. A lot of people would say, why not Vigilance? And you absolutely can use Vigilance, so here is another place we can make a change. I have gone with Concussion, and the reason for this is because with this build being slightly more aggressive with moving around, nobody can take this talent away from you. If you get hit, it doesn't go down for 2, 3, 4 seconds or whatever you would have it down for. This just stays up no matter whether you get shot or not. And obviously we are going to be getting kills, and it's the exact same amount of damage. So let's read the talent. Concussion increases total weapon damage by 10% for 1.5 seconds, 5 seconds with marksman rifles. Okay, so headshot kills increase total weapon damage by 15% for 10 seconds. So we're effectively going to get that 25%, but we just have to get headshots and headshot kills, which is something that this build is doing pretty much all the time. So, as we have a 5% of weapon damage on the Walker Harris, I've decided with the other two pieces that I've got in the minute that I'll show you in just a second, the only other thing that I could really choose would be another Imminence Armaments, which is giving me another 5% weapon damage, so that gives me up to 10 with the Walker Harris. And basically what this is just weapon damage, crit chance, and headshot damage. So rolled like that, but it's given us that other 5% weapon damage as we only have one free slot. And I personally feel that weapon damage is the most important thing when you're building these headshot damage builds. So for the other two pieces, this is another change that can be made. I do advise using the Habsburg Guard because obviously the 20% marksman rifle. So on the first piece, that's going to give us 13% headshot damage, and then the 20% marksman rifle damage on the two. What I do say you might want to change is that I have the core attribute of 170,000 armor. You could absolutely roll weapon damage here if you so choose. I've just gone with this because I feel like having a slightly higher armor pool allows me to be a bit more aggressive and move around and play close range when I'm sniping. And for my attributes on the bottom, I've gone for headshot damage and crit chance. The story is much the same with the knee pads, which are rolled pretty much exactly the same. They have armor, crit chance, and headshot damage. And basically this is just going to give me 1.1 million armor and allow me to move around and just not be as squishy as taking all reds. But you can change this however you like. So onto my skills. I am using the Reviver Hive just to pick myself up if anything goes wrong if I'm playing solo, which is, for most times, this is what this content is going to be for, playing solo or playing with a couple of friends. Somebody doesn't have to run over and get me. I just have the one shot in there, but you know, it's sufficient to get me up if something goes wrong. I'm also using the holographic distraction because it does help me in a bit of a tight spot. I can just throw this out and distract an enemy. Also, sometimes you have enemies that don't have a headshot zone or have protected heads, so things like chungas and the riot stick ladies that are with the hyenas. When you hit them in the helmet, you don't get the headshot and it takes your stack away from you, so you may want to prioritize those enemies last. Hence the reason why I have the decoy. However, if you want to choose a different skill here, I can highly recommend you to do so, whatever you feel comfortable with. And obviously we've talked about the flashbang grenades. They can also help us get away from certain types of enemies, humanoids, that we can flashbang and then get some distance away from them, as we are looking to play sort of long to mid range for the most part. Okay, so that's everything sorted there. Let's go and have a quick look at the range. It's on heroic. We'll just make sure that the global modifiers are not on, which they are not, so we don't see false stats. And then what I'll do is I'll just go over to the stat sheet. So weapon talents are determined and preservation that are shared, so I have both active at all times when holding my primary and secondary weapons. We have busy little bee on the pistol, and we can see some damage numbers here. Most importantly, the headshot damage, we can see that we are over the 150% cap. Weapon damage is obviously quite high. We have taken a couple of armor cores. This could be higher if we wanted it to be. However, in this particular case, the damage is plenty enough to one-shot 90% of enemies, minus maybe a named enemy that we might not be able to kill if we were in a group. I've not fully tested this yet though, so for the most part, I think if you were playing solo, you should be able to one-shot everything. Okay, so we have concussion, and we have perfect headhunter as our gear talents, and we also have abridged. We have the Tinkerer mask. We have one piece of Aroldi Holdings, one piece of Walker Harris, one piece of Eminence Armaments, and two pieces of Habsburg Guard. Our defense is just a little over 1.1 million, just a smidge. So we do have some room to move around. Gives us the ability to play a little bit closer and maybe a little bit more aggressively. Also, with preservation being a percentage, so 20%, 20% of 1.1 billion armor is going to be more than, say, 800,000 if we'd taken all red. So we get a little bit more value out of the regeneration from the talent. Obviously, quick disclaimer here, if you aren't watch rank at level 1000, you're not going to see the same numbers. You're going to see slightly different numbers here, so please keep that in mind. And just remembering that we have the hive and the decoy. So, how to play this build? I think I will go through a couple of things. First off, let's just start with the Tinkerer mask and looking under our ammo. We can see there a little A, and we can see that it's red at the moment. That means that the talent is not active and is not working. So that's worth looking at and noting to make sure that you have your talents active. The other thing is I'm using flashbang grenades, so remember we can throw these out to flashbang humanoid enemies and potentially get away from them if they got a little too close. We also have the decoy as well, which we can use to distract enemies that we may not wish to engage straight away, helmeted enemies or non-humanoid enemies that we cannot headshot. And what we can also do is when we first start, we use our sniper rifle. We're going to be looking to get a headshot. Now that's not always possible straight off the bat. As you can see, we can't kill this gold enemy straight away here, so that becomes a problem. So where that becomes a problem is when there's no weaker enemies to shoot, where we would just shoot a red or a purple to get that first kill. Once we start seeing all gold enemies, what we can do is we can switch and we can hit a few enemies, and what this is going to do is going to allow us to get that extra damage that we might need to one-shot the enemy and then allow us to start creating our headshot damage chain. So with that said, I'm also going to show the regen capability here. So if I just hurt myself a little bit, take myself down to health there, and what I can do is come back over here and let's just drop the difficulty a little bit just so we can make this easier to show. So I'll start with my main weapon, and as you can see I have the talents alpha bridged over because once I get a kill I'm going to get that preservation procced, and what's going to happen is as I keep getting kills it's going to keep refreshing the bonus, allowing me to regen, and you'll see that my regeneration starts to go up quite quickly. So very, very useful because this allows me to be aggressive when I play. I don't need to stay in cover, and if I start taking some damage, it's going to mean that I can actually move around and not have to jump into cover and play as timid as what I would do if I was playing an all red sort of one-shot build normally, which is extremely useful. So the other point that I was going to make was just that I have the other Model 700 with the long scope on, and sometimes you're just going to find yourself at a long range where aiming for the head like this, especially with a controller and the enemy moving, might be a little bit awkward. So in which case we can switch weapons, although we do have a lower magazine and have to reload it. It's worth noting that we can use this to help us proc the bonus, but as you can see the red is down on the alpha bridge, so we are not getting the determined. So we need to make sure that that is up, otherwise we don't get it, and you can see there it's actually off. So how we can sometimes fix this, I believe, is just by switching the weapons around, and then you should see now that that is working. So now I have both active. So if that ever happens, just remember to look at the little A just below the ammo count there. You can see it near the holographic distraction below there, and you can see if it's lit up in red, it means that it's inactive, and if it's lit up in like an orangey colour, then it means it is active. And again, we can see that happen here now, and I will lose the bonus, so it's worth just checking that and making sure that you do have it active. I've not fully tested this, so I don't want to give out wrong information, but just be careful to make sure that you do have it active. Alright guys, hopefully that's useful information. I have maybe one or two other builds that I'm wanting to bring out and show soon, and I've not been very active recently as I've been playing Battlefield 6. Okay, hope that explains everything and the reasons for the absence. See you all in the next one, and thanks again for all the support.